Hello. I hope people are still coming and don't mind. If they come, they don't mind that we started without them. Let's talk about. Wait a second. I think I killed my mouse. There is it. Welcome to my talk, Beyond 1,000 BOSH Deployments. And the clicker is empty. Sorry, it's Google Slides, company mandatory. So I welcome you to the talk. It's nice that you have all come. It's my first conference talk, so I hope I don't rush through it. So the title is stolen from Julian, our CEO, which a few years ago made a theoretical thoughts about how do you deploy 1,000 data services. And last year we reached the 1,000 data services on a single BOSH Director. And this is how the issues we faced and the fun we had. And let's start with introducing. 1 second, that was one too many. I'm Sven. I'm at anynines since 2015. I'm an ordained minister in New Zealand. I'm working with Cloud Foundry, BOSH, and lately Kubernetes at anynines. And you find me on Twitter as Shalalia, which is also where I'm also from. So I'm mentor in EVE Online, and it's also where this Slack avatar comes from and the name comes from. So it's basically the only Twitter account I ever had for a longer time because it was just something I liked. And I'm responsible for all the office plans in the anynines office. I got a complaint once to HR, the office is too green. So, but enough of the introductions. Let's start with the road to 1,200 deployments, because I have lied, we don't only have 1,000, we have 1,214 was our highest peak. And so first is probably the question, what the hell did you do to get 1,200 BOSH deployments on a single BOSH Director? Well, it's pretty simple. We are the users of the anynines data service framework, and as anyone who have heard about it, we are using dedicated instances, and this is an architectural diagram. So basically, if you do create service, the broker instructs a deployer, which then deploys the VMs on BOSH. So each and every one of these 1,200 deployments is one data service that a customer uses. And it works pretty well so far. So first, in our usual environments, we don't only have one BOSH, because we were thinking at the beginning, yeah, but if we have a BOSH with 200 deployments, what happens if 50 databases and the runtime breaks? What should we repair first? So we decided we have 3 BOSHes. So first, we have the over BOSH, which is there to deploy the runtime, and only the runtime, and the under BOSH. We have the under BOSH, which deploys the service brokers and all service VMs. This is also the one with the 1,200 deployments. The other ones are below 20. And the utility BOSH, which is there for all the utilities like Inception, billing, and the Prometheus monitoring. I'm sorry, we don't use the CF metric store already. So with those 3 BOSH directors, it's pretty straightforward. But here we already learned some lessons in our trip. So first, the over and the utils BOSH are created with create-env, because the over BOSH was there first. And then after a while, we thought we should probably put the monitoring somewhere else. So we have 2 directors which were created with create-env. And today, in the meantime, we changed our process. So we deployed the utils BOSH with create-env. And then we deployed the other 2 directors, or as we now have it, we have multiple under BOSHes, because we don't want to see what happens if you have 2,000 on it. And so the utils BOSH is also now the responsible to deploy all other BOSH directors which we use. And we got the great idea, hey, we have CredHub. Let's merge those CredHubs, so we only have one CredHub, and we used the one which was co-located on the other BOSH. But there's the problem that suddenly nobody can create a service if the over BOSH is updating, because the over BOSH has the CredHub co-located. So this is why we went over, and now the utils BOSH deploys a HA deployment consisting of UAA and CredHub, which is then used by the BOSH directors for their store. And this way we still have it in a way that all directors can access it without any director upgrade interfering. And we decided back then to use an external RDS. And while you think, yeah, we just take an Amazon RDS, it solves all our problems. No, it doesn't. It just moves the problem somewhere else. But more about that later, because that's at least two of the issues we had. So let's start it. So we have the BOSH set up. We have everything running. The runtime is ready. The first customers hit in January 2018. Let's start running it. And at first, let's bring what the issues we had at the beginning. I/O credits, they are extremely fun. So Amazon uses them. GCP also uses them. But since we don't use GCP, it's about AWS. And AWS has the biggest system. So we fell over it like 10, 12 times. So on Amazon, they use the default disk type GP2, which is an SSD volume. And those volumes are limited by IOPS. And you get 3 IOPS per gigabyte of disk size. So the bigger your disk, the more you are allowed to do on that disk. So you don't have it on magnetic stores. There is the bandwidth delimitation. And we have on stage, the Director RDS database runs on GP2. And on production, it runs on standard, which is basically magnet disk, slow. Amazon doesn't recommend it anymore and deprecated it, and you should never even touch it. And you can see the disk IOPS budget in CloudWatch, but there is one problem with it. You cannot see it when it's an RDS instance, because then they don't show you. So if you want to check it, then we started making an alert on the queue length, aka how many I/O operations are queued, and when they go over more than 3 operations queued on average, it's either that's a lot happening or the director or the disk doesn't have IOPS anymore. And the alerts are also great. You cannot just make an alert like, yeah, look at all disks and tell me whenever one disk goes under 20%. No, you have to set it up for each disk separately, and when you delete the disk, you have to separately delete the alert. So basically, you need an automation to monitor your disk. So what is the effect of what we have here? So in the production, the disk is slower, but it's very consistent. So we never have any variance in the reaction time to database. But on staging, we had it go unresponsive at times, not working, and we scaled it and scaled it. So, and this is how we are at the moment. So as you see, there's a large difference and a 40 times higher cost for the staging BOSH Director, which only runs at peak with 600 deployments. So you can see, if you optimize your disks on Amazon, you can also already start to save some money and save yourself a lot of worries, because we had like 3 weeks where it was daily like, I think we got into stall again, or not, or is it just the BOSH Director? And it's bad if you have to wonder if the software is the issue or if it's just the disk not working. So let's continue with things that drain your IOPS. For the BOSH Director, the daily snapshot task, even if you disable snapshots, what I saw most times, it still queues a snapshot task for each and every deployment. And when you have 1,000 deployments, then it goes for them all and asks for the deployment configs, asks for the cloud config, asks for the manifest, asks for everything, and then to say like, oh, snapshots are disabled, bye. BOSH VMs and the BOSH deployments, which was originally also a problem, it got better in the meantime. I will also explain it later. And if you get drained repeatedly, think about going to SC1 or ST1, which are the magnet types. They are a bit slower than GP2, but they cost half of GP2, and they are consistent, and you never have to worry about IOPS. So that's where we are going with the staging director database in the near future. We just go to a magnetic disk and like, okay, we just dealt with that problem. It will never come again, and we don't have to pay for a terabyte of disk from which we use 5 gigabyte. So now let's talk about some issues. I think Morgan still dislikes me from that time, because there was like the fall of 2018 and winter. So basically every 1 or 2 weeks he the BOSH core team probably woke up, looked at Slack and was like, oh, they broke it again. There's still a channel in Slack for issues we have because we had issues. So let's start with our first big problem. So we were like in the September, all nice and shiny, 670 deployments. The director VM is very slow. So we wait like 2 or 3 minutes sometimes to come back. Some clients even say like, okay, that BOSH director isn't coming back, I'm disconnecting. We scaled the BOSH, we scaled the database, nothing works. Even an M4 to X large RDS doesn't make anything. And we also added more disk IOPS. We went to 3 terabytes in the meantime. It was nothing helping. So what was the solution? Well, this one was pretty simple, thanks to SAP, because they stumbled over the issue first. They fixed it before we found it. And the problem was that the director was just going, whenever you do BOSH VMs, it also selected for each deployment the deployment configs, even though it wasn't any part of the output. So it just did a join request between 2 tables whenever you asked for VMs of a deployment. And that was about 1,000 requests per second while we are doing BOSH VMs. And after that was gone, it was pretty much faster. So when we updated the BOSH director, we went down from like an average response time of 1 minute and 40 seconds to 8 seconds to BOSH deployments, because deployments did the same. And thanks to SAP for fixing it before we had the issue. So we solved this issue by simply just updating the software. The next problem, unfortunately, SAP didn't find first. We found it first. So the same issue. We have a BOSH that is unresponsive, or if it answers, it's extremely slow. We cannot upload anything. We cannot start deploy tasks. We had error messages. So I look at BOSH VMs for the under BOSH, like 50% disk free. Well, it looks like the disk is full, but the disk is half empty. So I SSH onto it, and like, nothing happens. Okay, let's create a file. And like, oh, cannot create file. Inode's exhausted. So the problem was that BOSH keeps the logs. So when you do BOSH logs, it basically just reads the logs from the VM and just prints them out to you. And the problem was that BOSH stores the task logs and deletes them regularly, but it only deleted, I think, two every cycle. So we created tasks just simply faster than they could delete it. And thanks to the BOSH Prometheus exporter, we did a lot of BOSH VMs every 5 minutes, 900 BOSH VMs. So we had 1.8 million folders on the disk, and each of them containing 0 to 3 files. So either it was already deleted, there was a zip of it, or there were like the CPI, the debug, and the output log. And so quick triage was pretty simple. I delete some old logs files, like 1.79 million of them. I scaled the disk higher, so I got more inodes available. I wrote a message to the BOSH core, opened an issue, and of course we set up an alert for the inode usage. So usually the ops mantra is you can do every mistake once, but you shouldn't do it twice because an alert should have warned you. And then we switched from the BOSH exporter to the Graphite HM plugin from Prometheus, which is basically, instead of doing BOSH VMs, it just forwards all the data that the BOSH already gets from the health monitor, and it contains the same data in the meantime. At the beginning, it didn't all contain all data. Now it contains all data, so use it. Don't use the VM exporter. As soon as you reach any amount of deployments, you're probably going to shoot yourself in the foot. And the BOSH core also did a fix. They made BOSH more aggressive at deleting. So I tested last week, and we only had 18,000 task log folders on the disk, which is a slight increase from 1.6 to 1.8 million. So then Christmas came closer. Everyone was happy. The BOSH core team was probably like, yay, 2 months without an issue from anynines. And then we like, oh, we have a very slow BOSH director again. It was like, yeah, sometimes for minutes we couldn't do anything. It was happening during an upgrade. And we saw when we checked the network logs, it was like, okay, the BOSH contacts the database, but then cancels the request after 1 or 2 minutes. What is happening? So I investigated further, went into the debug logs, and since it was always happening when you tried to deploy a service or update it, we investigated what happened. So actually what happened, so our data service framework before was following the BOSH logs to find out if a task worked or not, but they changed the behavior that they just check with the recent task, is the task still running or is it done? To determine the state of the last operation, which was better for the CPU of the BOSH Director because it didn't have, in the worst case, 9 deployment tasks where everyone was just following with the CLI. So what does BOSH tasks-r do? It lists you the last 30 tasks. We had 3.5 million tasks in the database. And as you see, this is a very nice query. So basically, we flip the table around and then go from the top down and look until we find as many tasks as we were asked for. But what happens if you don't find enough? Well, the statement doesn't have any condition that prevents you from just going through with all of it. So what happened was each and every BOSH tasks-r caused the Postgres to go over 3.5 million lines, which, if it's requested 6 times at the same time, takes a moment to return. So it was basically just deadlocking itself, waiting for the database, which in turn only answered so slow because BOSH was asking so often. And then we had database response times of 3 minutes. It was a very interesting ticket to make for BOSH because step 2, reproduce. Create a BOSH director, make sure the tasks table is sufficiently filled, about 3 million entries should suffice. We could maybe help you with a script to do that if you require it. And, well, so we did a triage fix for that while we waited. So we changed the -r option to 1 in the broker, so we only get the last 1 task. Then to make sure, because with 1,200 deployments, you have always some deployments which don't have a recent task. We made a script which basically did a BOSH manifest, BOSH deployed that manifest. So basically each and every service deployment had 1 BOSH task which was successfully run, which didn't change anything, but at least the broker found a task that was successfully okay and he could continue. So after the issue, BOSH Core fixed it. They fixed it together with another issue where someone had about the same problem. So first, the old task from the database, instead of 2 on every cycle, it deletes 10 every cycle. And since we then finally got completely away from the BOSH exporter, we also created much less tasks. Like, there were times when we had like 500,000 tasks a day, because we had just every 5 minutes, 1,000 tasks, every 5 minutes, 1,000 tasks. Then customers create databases, customers delete databases, everything does a task. And so we went down. So last week I checked, we had 1,100 tasks in the database of the production Cloud Foundry, just because we don't do the BOSH VMs anymore, and because the BOSH is more aggressive at purging those old logs away. So now those were some problems. There were some more, but those were the most interesting ones and the ones where we basically had a nearly stopped BOSH director. Let's go to monitoring. Like, there's things you should monitor, but probably won't, because, for example, the Prometheus, as it is prepared for Cloud Foundry with all the Cloud Foundry dashboards and all the stuff, and Alert Manager is not set up to do that, but you should do it anyways, because those are things which can bite you. So first, you should check network IP exhaustion, especially in our case, where the customer is basically creating the VMs. You should always keep enough space free so the customer doesn't notice it first. Like, you can have a lot of problems as long as the customer doesn't notice that there are problems. In the operation world, everything is fine. It is IIS dependent, so you have to probably write that script yourself as a shell script or Ruby script or whatever you are familiar with. We use the push gateway to push those metrics, and then the disk IOPS. So we don't monitor all disk IOPS. We just monitor them on the important instances, like the BOSH shouldn't run out, the central database shouldn't run out. Because we are using a lot of T2 instances, we also have to check CPU credits on some instances, even though I must say a lot of people say, oh, you should never deploy on T2 instances. Yes, you can. With most components of Cloud Foundry fit on a T2 small or T2 medium instance. Then quota limitations. Our record for requesting a quota limitation increase was once when we asked Azure for 100 more CPU quota, and it took them 9 days to approve it because they were basically, can you please explicitly explain why you need 100 more CPUs? By the way, would you also take those 100 CPUs in the USA, or does it really have to be in Europe? Then the disk inode usage. After we had the issue with BOSH, we just set up an alert manager alert for all the inodes. And I must admit, it's a very rare problem that you run out of inodes, but nobody expects it if it happens. So in the worst case, you have an alert that will never get triggered. In the best case, you have an alert that saves you from debugging for a day. Then the next thing is certificate expiration. So the newer BOSH CLIs tell you when the certificates of the director expire, but not about all other certificates like UAA, CRETA. And that set up certificate expiration alerts. It's better than just adding a calendar event when you create it, because that alert will just trigger every day until you rotate the certificates. And nobody can say, oh, it was on the 2nd of September. My calendar only showed me August all month. And then you have the problem that you're like, okay, we have certificates that are not invalid now. And of course, make checks that check if metrics are missing, because if you have a metric that tells you if backups are working and there are no metrics coming in anymore, are the backups working or are they not working? Before you think like, oh, backups work, we don't get alerts. Okay, we don't see that we don't get any information about if those backups still work. So who knows? Maybe we have backups, maybe we don't. So, okay, that's the things you should monitor. And now about what 1200 deployments taught us as anynines and as operators. So first, if you have something that breaks the director, the BOSH team is usually pretty keen and fast on fixing it. They don't really like someone to tell them that the director is broken. BOSH itself is pretty stable, so usually when we manage to get tasks running, they ran without issues. So we didn't have any. So at first we had the fear that maybe if we had that many deployments, then we have maybe at some point state machine issues and inconsistent states, but it never happened. BOSH is, I mean, the worst case that can come out is if you restart the BOSH director cold while it's running a task, you have like a deployment half finished. That's like the worst that can happen so far. But the database state and the director state itself were never an issue. And if you use the Prometheus BOSH exporter, use the Graphite HM plugin. I repeat it, use it, it's better. And for smaller and medium environments, when it comes to the scale for the BOSH director, because I see a lot of people just like, yeah, we need a BOSH director and it needs to be an M4 2X large in all cases, else it just breaks. Like a T2 large, which costs you like $60 on Amazon, is enough for at least 200 to 300 deployments. And if it goes larger, you can think about an M5X large or 2X large or your IIS equivalent. So M5X large is 4 CPUs, 16 gigabytes of memory. And at this point, your I/O speed to the disk and the network speed will become the main issue, not the CPU. Like all our BOSH directors just idle around at 5% CPU all day. But there's an advice I should give. Don't overdo the worker count. Just don't think like, I have a big BOSH director, I will do a lot with it. I make 20 workers, because you have to scale your BOSH director so it's able to survive all the workers working simultaneously. So our biggest BOSH director, the one with the 1200 deployments, has 9 workers, and one of them is just basically only there for BOSH VMs. And we never had issues, because if you have, for example, backing services, people usually don't generate and delete backing services every 20 minutes, apart from our tests. and the chance that you use all those tasks is rather low. But you have to keep in mind, you have to be able to support all those tasks, else your BOSH director might become unresponsive or slow, and you get the same problems as we have. So this is the end. If you want to keep in touch, you can also come at the booth, talk to me, or find me on the conference. I will be probably around till tomorrow evening. Do you have any questions? I have a microphone. Of course, I get a question from the most back-end row.
Thanks. I wanted to ask how many instances the deployments have.
So the instances the deployments have depends on the data service flavor. So the instance types are either, so each deployment is either a single nano instance, or it's a cluster, or in the case of our LogMe service, it's either 4 or 6 VMs.
Okay.
So on stage, we have more nano services. On production, it's like 70–80% clusters.
All right, so you have to go times 4 about or more to get the instance numbers.
Yeah, so like make it like 2.5 for the amount of instances. I mean, I had an interesting discussion on the last CF operator call where someone from your company even explained to me that you should never put more than 100 VMs on a BOSH director, and was not really that happy with my answer. Do you want to operate a fleet of T2 small BOSH directors, or do you want to operate whatever comes out, whatever is running on those BOSH directors? So the thing is, VMs is one thing which is the one thing that gives you the disk, the network I/O, while the disk I/O often comes from the deployments, because that's where it puts the task logs, the VM information, and all the stuff. So, I mean, we also had seen pivotal cloud foundries which have more than those 2,000 to 3,000 VMs on a single director. So VMs is another metric, but with BOSH deployments you have different problems than when you have more VMs, because more VMs just mean the health monitor has more to do, more deployments mean there's more interaction with the database, which can cause issues. So we had like more the database side of the issues so far. Maybe in the future we will become we get the network I/O side a bit more if we have more clusters. But currently, I don't think we go much higher, because we now starting to use more than one under BOSH, because we decided that it's probably a better idea to not find out what breaks with 2,000 deployments or 3,000 deployments, and just say, okay, we managed to run it at 1,200 deployments. I mean, every problem we had was fixed in upstream, so you all get the benefit of it. And did that answer your question?
Yeah, that answered it. Yeah, good. And it's great to have this collaboration where we both fix issues, like SAP, anynines, other companies, and profit from it. Can I ask another question, or is there somebody else?
I don't see any raised hands. If you have a question, don't run out of the room right now. Okay, everyone has questions?
The other thing is we currently see a problem when updating large deployment instances on large landscapes where we see it timed out, where nuts messages time out. We're currently working on that. We also have an issue upstream open. I was asking if you also see that.
No, we haven't seen that yet.
Okay.
So probably you will most likely fix it again before we have the issue, so we update and never have the issue in the first place. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Or, okay, it's a coffee break, so, and I just have half a minute left, so I'm letting you leave early to your coffee break, and I wish you a nice rest of the summit, and I hope you learned something in the talk. If you have if you want to talk to me, just find me on a conference or come to our booth. They usually know where I am. So have a nice summit, and I hope I helped you somehow.